So I'll just say hello to our listeners who are following this podcast series in great anticipation of the book of the year. Of course, it's the book of the year to us, The Super User Revolution. So I'm here with my dear friend and co-author Michael Doane once again in our podcast series, highlighting this book that we hope is going to shift the way that you think about achieving ROI across your business process landscape. So let's go ahead and dive into chapter 2, Evolution or Revolution. So, Michael, I want to open this up with, do you remember when we landed on the book title?
I think the very first conversation we had, you remember, lasted about 2.5 hours. And I think that we got to what are we going to name the baby after about 2 hours. And our discussion had centered around, as you will find, dear listeners, the sharing of notes and experiences that we have had through the years, with Ginger's being far more than mine, and mine being somewhat different. But we both had noticed that some clients, it's simply a matter of evolution. You can work with them more easily, and others, you take a loaded gun because it takes a cultural revolution for anything to happen. So we settled on, and as you've seen, almost certainly on the book title, the R in revolution is surrounded by parentheses because you can have the R to make if it's a revolution, or not if you're into evolution. We're going to make the distinction for you here in this very brief podcast, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, I know that it was pretty exciting for me when we landed on that one. I wanted to jump through the phone and hug you. I think I probably did. You probably felt that hug.
I totally did.
So I'm going to jump into the first of these minimal efforts. So we talk about 3 minimal efforts that you need to have if you're going to be in evolution or revolution, right? Right, Michael?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so we knew it wasn't just about super users. We knew that we had to address the end users first because that's where it all starts. Without end users, you don't have super users. So first, number 1, the role of end users as drivers of business process fulfillment. It's clearly understood and also appreciated by your senior management and your line management. Michael?
I'm going to add, you've heard me say this before if you've been on these. The key word there is business process fulfillment. The end users are the only people who do that. Everybody else is just watching. Okay? So you've also got to have a minimal element in order for this to be evolution rather than revolution, that one or more people are assigned ownership of the following: maintenance and improvement of ongoing end user competency. That seems obvious, but less obvious is that you have to have a permanent budget for support and extension of that competency. If you don't, it's going to run out. We'll talk about that till the cows come home.
Yeah, there's plenty of that in the book for sure. And then also, number 3, relative to point number 2 that Michael just went over, you have a formal process that's in place for the training and replacement of your end users, because you don't end up with the same end users you started with. And Michael's going to talk about that here in just a few minutes. But very important that you have a formal process, that it's not an ad hoc and person-dependent process. Michael?
Yeah, let's move on to some of the more desirable elements that you want to test yourselves for in regard to evolution or revolution. Because if any of these maturity elements are missing, the company in question is in need of a revolution. Our advice is that the lessons and standard described in the previous chapter of this book that we've already discussed in previous podcasts as well become subjects of education for the relevant managers in your group. So desirable elements include application software usability is a performance criterion for applications development and maintenance. People with carpal tunnel syndrome from using SAP are not going to be happy users, and you need to treat them properly. Some means of performance measurement of individual users and groups of users should be available. You have to have some objective performance measurement so that people can see how well or badly they're doing relative to your ideals.
Well, Michael, I think, and I just want to make a point on that, Michael, and I think everyone can agree, the saying, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So it really gets to the heart of that. This is not soft, and I've said this before, this is not soft kumbaya stuff, and we're proving that with this book. So, yeah, I just wanted to add that point, Michael.
Oh, yeah, we had a saying when I was an industry analyst at Metagroup, which was later bought by Gartner, and our saying was, if you're not measuring, you're only practicing. Right?
What does that say about the practice of law and the practice of doctors?
There's there. Come on. Anyway, we want you to have a company culture that lends itself to horizontal collaboration rather than a strict vertical compartmentalization. We are now in a world of working through horizontal business processes, but many organizations remain rigidly vertical, and a rigidly vertical organization is not going to be amenable towards a necessarily horizontal super user network. And okay, people who know me know already my attitude about traditional IT and business. One of the words or phrases that I hate the most is business and IT alignment, which suggests that they're an equal partnership. They are not. They are not. Business is there to be served by IT, and that's gospel. Ginger?
Yeah, and I think we could have a whole separate podcast on those 2 points right there, and the horizontal collaboration versus the vertical, because that takes me all the way back to the 90s with Michael Hammer in the business process reengineering era. So, boy, I would love to do that one day, Michael. I think we should do that. So let me talk about the horizontal collaboration rather than strict vertical compartmentalization. I think this is really important in super user communities. So I recently read, and I also shared this on LinkedIn, a post by Elon Musk that I think is extremely relevant for us in this. And I'm just going to read it to you. He says, and this is a quote he sent to all of his employees: anyone at Tesla can and should email/talk to anyone according to what they think is the fastest way to solve a problem for the benefit of the whole company. You can talk to your manager's manager without his permission. You can talk directly to a VP in another department. You can talk to me. You can talk to anyone else without permission to do so. Moreover, you should consider yourself obligated to do so until the right thing happens. The point here is not random chit-chat, but rather ensuring that we execute ultra fast and well. We obviously can't compete with the big car companies in size, so we must do so with intelligence and agility. And he goes on to say that managers should work hard to ensure that they are not creating silos within the company that create an us versus them mentality or impede communication in any way. This is unfortunately a natural tendency and needs to be actively fought. How can it possibly help Tesla for departments to erect barriers between themselves or see their success as relative within the company instead of collective? We are all in the same boat. Always view yourself as working for the good of the company and never your department. And Inc. Magazine's Justin Bariso argues that while he's a huge fan of the message the email conveys, it's easier said than done, which I think we all recognize that, but it doesn't mean it can't be done. He says communication that is forced to go through the proper channels is a recipe for killing great ideas and burying the feedback that a company needs to thrive, Bariso writes. I tell you, I love this series of quotes here because it really gets at the heart of the why it's such a struggle to get true cross-functional collaboration. I mean, right now, the big buzz is around how we are going to bridge these gaps. I hear this over and over and over by executives. So it is a big buzz. You can get out there and read all about it. And so I think that that's one of the problems, and that's one of the challenges that we're seeking to solve within the super user revolution. Right, Michael?
Totally. And I'll simply tie a bow on this, that we all hate interfacing. Interfacing is a necessity when you don't have workflow. Think of interfacing as the locks in the Panama Canal by which your ship goes, stops, goes, stops, goes, and stops, rather than simply sailing on through. If you have horizontal workflow, you're making good use of your enterprise applications. If you don't, you're making poor use of it.
Great
Enough
point.
said.
Yeah, great point.
We're going to do a whole routine on this down the line, Ginger. I think we're agreed.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk about as well the subject of continuity. We've given you some of the basic foundations as to whether or not you're evolution or revolution. I'm guessing many of you listening in are already thinking, "Oh darn, we're revolution." Not to worry. We have some background for you that will help you smooth the way, hopefully turn it closer into evolution. I want to talk about the subject of continuity. One of the main problems in our world of enterprise applications is attrition. And did a little exercise, which is covered at some length in the book, that if you start your enterprise applications on day one of go live with 1,000 users, and you have what is considered a typical attrition rate for end user positions of around 12%, at the end of 3 years, you've lost 328 people out of the 1,000. That's quite a bit. So we ask the question, who replaces 328 people, and how are those replacements trained or oriented? Do you just follow the brain dead strategy that your senior management often speaks of, which is, oh, they'll figure it out? That's a very fast way to spur a revolution. Further, without refresher training, the result is that the user group competency degrades over time. Because over time, you're going to change the business processes, you're going to upgrade, you're going to change processes again, and hey, you had another reorganization. They only happen 3 times a year. The ensuing inefficiencies and mistakes may make the tough times all the worse. So you have to have some way of addressing that continuity, and that's one of the first and major functions of a super user network. Now, I'm going to toss this one straight to Ginger because we discuss this quite often. Ginger, why did you choose the label super user when there are others like key user and power user and SME, which is short for subject matter experts? How did you determine, though I totally agree with you, why super user is the best moniker?
Well, for starters, it is by far the most commonly used term. And I've been working with super users since the late 90s, and it's been the case for all that time. So we put a poll on the website that revealed 50% of respondents said that super user was the term that they used. And then the next highest response for that was power user, but that was only 17% of respondents. And of course, it went down from there. So overwhelmingly, super user is the common term that's used in the market. But as well, I mean, the term power user, the whole power, I'm in power. I don't know. Michael and I have pinged that around for a while, but I don't want to disengage anyone that's out there using the term power user, and that's fine. But we will talk about market standards as we move through this, not this podcast, but the super user revolution and beyond. But I also found with groups, including our leaderboard and our executive advisory board, that the discussion around evolving the term from super user to something else, it is a very emotionally filled and lively discussion when you talk about the possibility of evolving that term into something else. For me, I absolutely love the superhero theme that this provides us, and we get a lot of positive energy around super users. So for me, I love it.
Yeah, I had one story, and I'll close on this, but it does matter what you call these people. I have a contact named Jim I've known many years, and some years ago he said to me, Michael, we have a problem. Our senior management doesn't like the term power user or super user. They say that's too glorified. And I had to say, Jim, I'm sorry, you have far worse problems in your company than the lack of a super user network.
Sure.
By the way, I don't know what they ever settled on. I'll have to get back to him.
Yeah. I'll be anxious to hear that.
Yeah. So returning to the axis between evolution and revolution, how high is the climb? How long is the gap between where you are and where you want to be? Ginger and I are agreed that in all cases, your goals should be lofty, but you may feel the need to mature incrementally. So in that light, we're going to pretty much close with this here, that here are key super user goals that you should have in mind as you're going down the path. And we're going to take turns on this one. I'll begin. The first one is to assure a continuously high level of end user competence relative to the business applications. This will promote business process excellence.
Yeah. And number 2, you're going to vastly reduce or eliminate the need for continuous training and help desk services while promoting peer-to-peer collaboration and support. This is going to reduce cost, and it's going to raise user competency levels as well as active collaboration.
We've used a lot of words in these first 2. I'd like to say that step 1, the key word is continuous, and in step 2, the key word is active. Keyword are active collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely.
Third point: provide business process excellence insight to business process owners with an eye on measurable business process improvements. I make the point again. If you have business process owners up on the 38th floor doing their arrow box designs and then simply fobbing them off on the end users, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that, when you use the term business process excellence, I'm going to add a word to that. I'm going to call it business process execution excellence. And I like that because we all know that there are great ideas, and these great ideas might sound like they're really wonderful, but in execution, they either stink or they fall on their face. So I really love the execution piece of that. All right, I'm going to go into point number 4. Protect the integrity and shelf life of the enterprise application's assets. This is really important because when we talk about ROI, you also have to include in that the equation of long-term cost of ownership. That, again, is a whole nother podcast that we should do in the future, Michael, just specifically talking and helping people understand what does long-term cost of ownership mean. I'll let you go to point number 5 on that.
And point number 5 is a repeat, but just from a different angle, promoting cross-functional collaboration. This activity should become a natural part of the daily performance of all users across a horizontal plane so that working in silos becomes utterly unthinkable.
I love that. Unthinkable. That points back to Elon Musk's email that he sent out to all of his employees. So it's not just the two of us thinking this. I hope that everyone listening here is shaking their heads going, oh yeah, I want to be a part of that. So we're going to stop here and we're going to have a part 2 of this. So we didn't cover everything in chapter 2 from a summary standpoint. So we're going to have part 2 of chapter 2. So Michael, what kind of fun are we going to have in that next podcast?
This one will simply be a little trek down memory lane. We're going to go back through the brief and rocky history since about 1995 of the whole super user subject. There will be 5 eras that we're going to cover for you. The first one is, we think we know how to do this. The second one is the initial super users era. The third is boldly saying the maturing super users era. But get ready for number 4, which was our super user network fell apart era. Which leads us right into today with the happy ending, the build a super user network that lasts era, and should be a lot of fun. We look forward to your joining us.
All right. Well, Michael, it's been another great one. Hope everyone enjoyed. Be sure to get up on the YouTube channel if you want to check out all these podcasts in this series, and go have a super day. Until next time.